Well, hello everybody. Welcome back to the channel. This is David Bianco and
Brad. Howdy.
Yeah, thanks for coming back. We are going to be doing another shootout, but this time it is going to be of the Inxs Kick 45 RPM 2LP series, going with the AP 75th Atlantic series, which won our first shootout, and putting it up against the Abbey Road 2018 Half-Speed Master by Miles Showell. It too is on 2 LPs at 45 RPM. So, apples and apples this time. I shouldn't say apples with Abbey Road, but anyway, I guess it works.
No pun intended.
No pun intended. But a good shout out to my friend in the Nashville area who is a viewer of the channel and sent me that Abbey Road to do this shootout. Thanks again for your help. So this one, again, we're going in a situation where both of these have been redone at 45 RPM, giving the supposedly ideal cutting methodology. Now, one observation I can make is that just looking at the way the sides are cut on the records, the APs are definitely cut more to the outer circumference of the record, while the Abbey Roads are cut more across the entire groove area toward the center. Now that can create some intergroove distortion as you get closer to the center. So again, different approaches, different mastering engineers. There's always the theory of things, and then there's the application of how it really comes out. But in this case, they both sounded, well, they sounded better than the original, I think, but there was something distinct about the Abbey Road that we're going to talk about, because in fact, it is in fact a digital one that comes to vinyl through digital processing, where the Analogue Productions version was all analog tape. So we do again have that distinction as well to contend with. So our main focus on this was the first record that had, on side A, we focused on New Sensation, A Devil Inside, and on side B, the second side, Need You Tonight, Mediate, as well on that record. So we really focused mainly on that, those songs we know the best, and we're going to talk about what we found and what we heard on this. So Brad, give you the honors on this one.
Yeah, I guess, starting out with New Sensation, that one, you could hear a difference right off the bat. At least I could. And keeping in mind that, one thing important to mention is we were blinded to which one we were listening to using David's setup, where he has basically two identical turntables, two identical cartridges, and kind of a switch to go back and forth. We didn't know which one was playing. When we would kind of switch off back and forth and kind of listen. So that's an important aspect to stress here.
Yeah, because I would switch while you were sitting and listening and vice versa.
Yeah, exactly.
So we blocked seeing the switch to know which one it was.
Yeah, but you could definitely tell a difference right off the bat. One was sort of more open and airy, particularly in the high end. I thought one was better on this song with bass as well. And then in particular in the mid-range area, particularly the upper mid-range, one thing I heard with one of them was a little bit of just kind of harshness, at least to my ears. You could even go on, if you listen to it long enough, you could say it might be fatiguing. You get to the point where it's like, okay, I'm going to ask which one is which here, and kind of find out which one was which, and that one was the Abbey Road. That's what I heard.
The fatiguing one.
Yeah, the fatiguing one. So the Atlantic 75 just sounded more natural and balanced to me, and particularly on the highs, it was just clear. It was almost like, we always use this analogy as, somebody took a blanket off my speakers. That's what it seemed like to me when I listened to it.
Yeah, there's definitely a different sound signature between the two. And I would say that there's a much more natural and open sound with the Analogue Productions cut. Definitely didn't have to search for certain instruments. Certainly heard more clarity, both vocally and especially on the drum side and the hi-hat end and that end where, Brad and I both being drummers, we listened for that more, I'd say. But definitely just a more open, airy kind of sound. The Abbey Road had some, I would say, muddiness in the upper mid highs. And I think maybe that's the part you may be relating to some level of fatigue. And so I think sometimes when that happens, the other consequence is that it overrides and muddles a bit then where the highs are present and they aren't as distinct and they aren't drawn out specifically to be heard. So in that particular case on that song, it became evident more and more as the song went on. And the clarity that was there on the Analogue Productions really made more distinction in the voices, the instruments, the kick drum. Just things were there that weren't quite as muddy. There was just some, it's kind of like when you have a kick drum. It's kind of the pad, hitting the drum. And it's almost like there's a little bit of a muffle sometimes in these other cuts. And in the Abbey Road had a little bit of that on this particular cut. It didn't have that solid thump kind of feel to it and the auditory nature of that as well. So that takes us on to A New Sensation, a great tune. What were your thoughts on that one?
I think Devil Inside, right?
Oh, sorry. I looked down at the wrong one.
Yeah, no, it's okay.
So
yeah.
Devil Inside's the second track we listened to, third track on the side.
Yeah. And, I think folks that know that song know there's a lot of bass there. Right off the bat, you have the kick drum and the bass, kind of playing along with that. And I thought both were pretty strong, but again, I felt that there was one that was more fleshed out, a little bit more, dare I say, natural sounding, maybe a little bit more detail. You could just hear the difference in sort of the naturalness, if you will, of one versus the other. And again, being blinded, I didn't know which was which. And then when Michael Hutchence starts singing, particularly there at the beginning, he's kind of singing low and kind of breathy, and boy, you could really hear just the naturalness of his voice and the range that was there. And it just sounded more real to me on one versus the other. And then you start, okay, which one is which? And again, it was the Atlantic 75. That was a pretty distinct difference to me. And then finally, towards the end, when it's sort of the ride out section, of the song, and, he's really pushing his voice, Devil Inside. And then he's, yeah, that part, the Abbey Road almost felt like he's shouting at you, or that's what it seemed like to me. And it was just, I'm like, whoa, and when you're kind of backing away from the speakers, that's not good, and it was like, wow, to the point where it's almost unpleasant. And that was a distinct difference to me as well.
Yeah. The voices in that song with the kind of the whispering kind of devil inside, that airiness in his voice really shone on the AP, where it really just didn't have that crispness and airiness. It was a little bit more, like you say, putting a little bit of something over your speaker on the end where you're getting that higher resonance of it. And it just didn't click. And again, I want to make the point, a lot of these records do sound very good on their own, but when you have the ability to do this 5 to 10 second difference back to back, you really can become much more analytical, or anal as the first four letters imply, on this, because you get that quick reaction and quick distinction in things, because you can go back right away and make that comparison. So by no means is it a matter of certain records where we say it doesn't quite sound as good. Doesn't mean they're bad. It just means when you have that raw comparison there, you can create a better distinction between the two. And again, that's what this process is about. It's about trying to literally compare an apples to apples comparison, having the same system, using the same phono stage, same cartridge, so that you can, very much so have a real time response to what you're hearing. And so some of that sound that was there in this upper mid range, again, just didn't hold up quite as strongly. And in some ways, again, a bit muddled comparatively to the Atlantic 75th. So let's look on side B then. Need You Tonight is a great starter song on a second side. What did you hear there, Brad?
Yeah, a huge hit, obviously. And again, I think to me the biggest difference between the two. And in fact, there's kind of that, it sounds like rim shots that are going on. Lots of percussion in that song, but kind of rim shots where it's like like that. And then on one, there was a kind of in the left channel, you could hear a little bit of, I don't know if it's a cymbal going along with it. It's kind of hard to make out exactly what they're using to do that. It could be a synth or something like that. But on one, it was there, and then the other one, it wasn't. And when you switch back and forth, it's like, wait, what happened to that sound on the left channel there? It just disappeared. And that's pretty bad. If you can't hear something that's there or should be there on one versus another, you're missing out on something that's, that they intended to be there. And so, again, okay, which one is which? And, that was the Abbey Road that had this percussion element was missing. And that was a stark difference to me. When something just disappears,
Yeah, it almost sounded like the tweeter wasn't working when the Abbey Road was playing on that left channel.
Yeah.
It was very, very obvious. Now I know, Brad knows this record a lot better than I do, and so he's characteristically looking for or listening for certain aspects of things. But even I, who don't know it that well, was picking that gap up immediately. So, why it happened, I can't say, but definitely it was something that was repeatable. We actually switched records between the two turntables even to compare, just to make sure nothing related to cartridges having any, minor difference they might have brought it out. But no, it was definitely related to that Abbey Road version missing that. And so that kind of derailed that song a bit, I guess I would say. Mm-hmm. And all the things we've said about the Analogue Productions 2x45 Atlantic 75th were true on that as well, in terms of how good it is and how strong it is. And of course, when you get that kind of comparison, the gap seems even bigger.
Mm-hmm. Very true.
One other distinction I want to mention on this side is we do volume matching, and we had it volume matched very well on side A. But I started to notice with certain bass effects that the Abbey Road was seeming louder than the AP. So we volume matched it again and recognized that it is cut a little louder on side B than it was on side A. So we had to adjust that as well. And so because there was kind of a artificial deeper bass coming through a little bit on the Abbey Road that we didn't recognize on side A. And in making that adjustment, it did tame it down and bring it closer. It still had some really good oomph to it. But the problem is maybe that emphasis there was part of the reason why we were losing some of that upper end when it was EQ'd or whatever was done to bring it to the final resting place in vinyl, so to speak,
True.
on that. Don't
Yeah.
know, but we did have to make a slight difference there from side A to side B to get them back to be volume matched. So that really was one that wrestled us to, losing something of significant sound that we really had noticed very pronounced, so to speak, on the AP version that was lacking there. And Mediate, I'd say, it again had that heavier bass inflection until we volume matched it as well. But again, just those upper, mids to highs in there, just some muddiness, some murkiness. If I was to make a visual to auditory comparison, it was a little blurrier than a crisp picture. That AP was really presenting a nice crisp picture of what was being played and how it sounded, and there was some blurriness there in those areas, especially that upper mid-range there where we were seeing some of that lacking. And again, some of the areas there where the bass got a little more overemphasized in the Abbey Road may have been contributory to some of that change in terms of that area toward the top that was not producing to the point of giving you the distinction of the actual instruments.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, your lower end kind of is a gutty kind of thing, on that, and you could feel it maybe was a little more impactful on the Abbey Road, but with the other parts being blurry and lacking, that didn't help anything. That
Right.
It didn't. It's you can say you get an A for effort, but really it really took away in some ways the fact that it probably was a compromise that in fact didn't yield the best outcome.
Yeah, I mean, it was interesting for me. Mediate was a little closer between the two, but I heard that difference as well. Maybe that kind of, it's like more bass with the Abbey Road, but it was muddier, like you said. And then the where I really noticed the difference was, the sax doesn't come in until kind of towards the end of the song.
Yeah.
And it kind of drifts in, and it's kind of in the background, and there's all this synth going on kind of around it, kind of ethereal, kind of atmospheric sound. And it was just more distinct to me. That's where I really noticed a big difference.
Sharper
it
in
was
the
just
AP.
sharper in the AP.
Yeah,
So
it
yeah,
was.
yeah, that was, yeah.
It was kind of subtle in the Abbey Road, I would say, for me.
Mm-hmm.
It came in, but it just didn't have any real identity or pop to it at all. It just kind of slid into the background, a little bit of a sax chameleon, so to speak.
Yeah.
Whereas it kind of punched you a bit and hit you with that little bit higher crisp sound that you got through the Analogue Productions. So in the end, the Analogue Productions retained its crown status, I guess I would say, for another way to put it, because it really does, on balance, bring it home consistently across the board, which I think is an important aspect of things. And I would say that the other thing about it is it's a tad quieter vinyl. I had done a comparison earlier today before Brad got here on that level. And the Analogue Productions is a tad quieter than the Abbey Road. Another aspect of things, didn't play heavy into anything, but it is something to mention as well. So any final thoughts?
I guess the only thing I would say, it's kind of like I said the last time on the, part one, if you will, versus the original in the MOFI. The Atlantic 75 is the one I want to keep listening to.
Yep.
And I think that's the best thing you can say about, when you find a winner, one that distinguishes itself, and it's like, which one, when I want to play this record, which one do I really want to play? How do I want to hear this in the best way possible, where it's not fatiguing and I want to turn it off? That's where you want to land at the end of the day. And that for me was the Atlantic 75.
Yeah. And, I can say, do we understand and always know what contributes to the way one sounds versus the other? Obviously, we have different mastering engineers, different processes. We have one that went to digital and then to vinyl, but it was at half speed, which it should have had an advantage in that. But again, if something you've done to overemphasize one end and take out of the other, half speed's just going to more accurately show that you did that. I mean, that's not going to, it's not in and of itself going to take that away or fix that or make it any differently.
Right.
You know, so that's the bottom line. And maybe, you know, we have a bias toward the analog sound and that type of thing as well. I do tend to experience a fatiguing in some formats in some ways, often, you know, when it's in digital. Digital done well doesn't usually do that, but there are times where it does happen. And for me, it's more a matter of just what do my ears tell me? Take the labels off, take everything else off, just blindly let me decide what sounds best to me. I know some people have found the Abbey Road to potentially be better, and their system, their situation, their hearing, sure. This is, of course, as always, just our experience. And it is something that is a reason why we do it, and we're fully comfortable that other people may come out with different results given the way they do it and given what they hear and experience. So again, that's part of the fun of what we do, and we're going to ask you if you would, if you haven't subscribed, please press on the bell below there to get notifications, and a thumbs up or like is appreciated, as are any comments you might have. So until we talk to you next time, Brad, thanks for joining me again, as usual.
Enjoyed it.
And we'll catch you next time on our next Safe and Sound Texas audio excursion. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.